Hands back down. Who hasn't heard of Travis Walton? Please leave. Okay, come on, you've got to have knowledge. Right. I ask these kind of questions because it gives me an idea on where to pitch the lecture. Seriously, about what kind of level I'm dealing with in terms of your knowledge. So, nil for the lady on the front row, sorry. Don't want to point, I would never point you out, but the lady in the glasses on the front row has no knowledge. Don't worry, I won't embarrass. Who has had to travel the furthest distance to get here? Anybody over 30 miles to get here today? 20 miles?
Spain.
Welcome to the 11th meeting of SUFON. Alright, let's kill the music. Alright, tonight we're very privileged to have the company of Mr. Gary Heseltine. Gary had his own personal UFO sighted in 1975. Six. Thank you. And this was to have a profound effect on his life, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Gary, like myself, is a retired police officer. He had a total of 22 years service.
24. Kill your research.
And spent much of the time as a detective.
19 years.
19 years. So he's well used to interviewing people and recording statements. Now I'm sure, like myself, after this much experience, he clearly possesses good judgment as to whether he's being told the truth or being lied to. Now in 2002 he founded the Prufos database, which caters for serving and retired British police UFO sighting reports. He's the founder and editor of UFO Truth magazine and was the former editor of the online publication UFOmonthly.com, as well as the former co-editor of UFO Data magazine. Now in 2010 at Washington DC he was presented with the Disclosure Award by Stephen Bassett's PRG Group, and in 2012 was awarded the Exopolitics Group Award. Yeah. He regularly gives talks and discussions worldwide on the subject of UFOs, and for many years he's been working closely with the retired Colonel Charles Holt to piece together Britain's most famous UFO case, which was the Rendlesham Forest incident of December 1980. Gary has undoubtedly become one of Britain's most renowned UFO investigators, and whilst he's probably used to giving talks at far larger venues than ours, I'm absolutely delighted that he has travelled so very far to be able to join us here this evening. So, without further ado, please give a warm SUFON welcome to Mr. Gary Heseltine. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you. That's enough. What a lovely warm welcome. Carry on if you want. No, it was a lovely welcome, thank you very much. I do lecture all around the country. It's the first time I've ever lectured in Wales, so this is good for me. So it goes onto my CV of countries that I've now lectured in, which is about 15 now. So I'm pleased and honoured to be here in Swansea. On a serious note, as was mentioned, I had a childhood sighting when I was 16. You were right, for many years I put it out that I was 15. But then a chance meeting with my former best friend from school, who I hadn't seen in over 30 years, last year, when we got our heads together based around girlfriends of the time, he actually said, no, that was the summer of 76, when you were going out with this lady. So it wasn't 75, it's 76, August 76. Alright, so that's why it's changed. So you were right, and turned out to be wrong. But it wasn't you. Right, so basically, who am I? Now, as I asked in the kind of warm-up, there's quite a lot of you who've never heard of me or seen me before. So, in all seriousness, I'll give you a bit of background. Between 1983 and 1989, I was a Royal Air Force police officer. And I did predominantly, 2/3 of that was spent what's called wire walking, what's called SD-814, guarding nuclear weapons. Okay? So just in relation to, just put your hands up if you've heard of the Rendlesham Forest incident. Well, that's quite a lot then, even the people who don't know me. Right, well, Rendlesham Forest is arguably the world's best case. Not just Britain's best case, I would say it's up there. arguably the world's best case, because it happened over 3 consecutive nights, multiple military police officers, ground trace evidence, radar evidence, lots and lots of detail. But I'm not here to talk about that as such. But the job that they did, those US Air Force police officers, was the direct equivalent of what I did in the Royal Air Force Police. And in fact, at RAF Larbruck, where I served in Germany, the design of what was called in the RAF the supplementary storage area, which is the nuclear bunkers, is exactly the same layout as the what they called weapons storage area, WSA, that the term the Americans use for the nuclear bunkers. Exactly the same. And on my lecture on Rendlesham, I've got a photograph where I went back after the base closed, and I was allowed to go into this restricted area, which was one of, microwaved, alarmed fences, so many guns pointing at you, and I was just able to walk in and take some photographs. It was bizarre. But it's exactly the same design. So that was 83 to 89, and then I joined the British Transport Police in 1989, and after 4 years became a detective, became qualified after 5 years, what's called a substantive detective, and was a detective constable for the rest of my career until I retired in 2013. So 24 years service, 19 years as a detective. I didn't want to go higher in the police because I didn't like the bureaucracy, the pettiness, and realistically I enjoyed interviewing people, suspects and witnesses, so I became a very specialised interviewer as time went on. That was my bag, as it were. So I was trained as high as you could go in interview, okay? And that's something I miss about the police, but nothing else really, okay? So in terms of my training, I was trained in terms of psychology, to look at witnesses, body language, things like that. And basically, in all the years that I did it, you develop a sixth sense for when somebody's telling you the truth, and that can be honed. A lot of it is a natural skill in terms of interviewing. Some people are good at interviewing, some people are not very good. You can be trained a little bit, but basically to be a good interviewer you've got to have a natural flair, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. Okay? Now, I could have gone on for another 6 years when I retired in 2013. I could have gone for my 30 years, but by that time something compelled me to retire early, and the circumstances with my second wife financially meant that I could retire early with my lump sum after 24 years and my RAF pension, that I took a chance and thought, I'm going to follow my passion and try to make a difference. So by creating the magazine, that was my way of trying to do something a bit different. Now, I started my active research publicly in January 2002 when I launched the Proof Force Police Database. Proof Force standing for Police Reporting UFOs. It started with 6 cases involving 10 officers. Now, 14 years on, I've now got over 550 cases involving 1,050 British police officers. That's a lot. And I'm writing the book about them now, as we speak, almost. Hopefully it will be out by the end of the year. Can't find a publisher anywhere, mainstream. It's funny that, isn't it? We'll talk about how mainstream are not interested in this subject. And it doesn't make sense that if you're doing well at something, you normally get more attention. But when I started the database in 2002, because I was still a serving police officer, the national media were very interested in me. I had lots of articles in national newspapers. After 2 or 3 years, they don't want to know, even though the numbers are going up by hundreds each year. Doesn't make sense, does it? Unless you logically think that there's somebody who doesn't want this kind of credible information to get out. Okay? Hence, one of the frustrations as to why I left and created the magazine. The beauty of the magazine is that there's no overheads. None of the experts that write columns are getting paid. They all do it voluntarily. because they're supporting my idea. But this is where you come in, because I ring fence a third of all monies that come in through subscriptions for UFO causes. Now initially that meant financing conferences, booking international flights for speakers and things like that, hotels. I pick up all that, the magazine. So in a sense that created the funding mechanism. But if we had thousands and thousands of people around the world buying into an e-zine, which you can just get by email, it's so simple, it could generate millions if we had thousands all around the world. It's a drop in the ocean for the amount of hits, but people are reluctant to pay, in reality, for something that they can't physically hold. Even though e-books have taken over from the printed word on Amazon and things like that, in terms of sales, there's still a reluctance. But people want to change, and people want to have some impact. And I say to people in the audience, well, the idea of a third of all monies being ring-fenced for UFO causes could do that. Because if you have lots of people doing it, then you're going to pay for a lot more than one conference or two conferences. You can then start taking full-page ads out in national newspapers where we don't need a reporter to tell us the facts. We can just put the facts in the newspaper and buy it. Can you imagine having paying £5 and say, I want a page in the Times? Wouldn't need an article then, would we? Wouldn't need a reporter to put their own bias on it. We just put facts and figures out on a full-page spread. That's what we could do in time, and people want to make a difference. Well, the difference is you pay your 40 pence a week is what it works out. The more people subscribe, the more that pot of money is for causes. I gave money towards Lloyd Pye's cancer fee. I gave donations to various documentary features, Cosmic Whistleblowers, the one about Roswell, the last Roswell dig. Give donations, so it's already working, but I get frustrated because people claim to be interested in this subject, but if they were really interested, they'd pay a few pence for the common aim of their subject. And I'm trying to do it not to make millions for me. I'm not really interested. I'm not selling DVDs. I've got some merchandising. It just helps. I'm not out to make a load of money, but I want to try to make a difference in the way people perceive this subject. Because anybody who thinks that this is Looney Tune time, which is what most people believe outside of this room, then they're the ones who are sadly blindfolded. Well, quite a lot of the people in this room said that they've never seen me before. Well, that kind of tells me that they don't know that much about the subject. Because in Britain, they shouldn't kind of like recognise me as one of the heads of the subject in this country. So it kind of tells me that there's a disconnect. That lots of people can go to 1 million websites on the internet, and I get quite angry at this because they become what I call the armchair expert. Oh yeah, I've got that site, yeah, I've got that site. They don't have to move the butts at all, but they take on the role of, yeah, I'm the expert. And they become self-perpetuated because they then launch their own sites without ever doing any proper research, without ever really knowing what's good and bad, the wheat from the chaff, and they put more disinformation out there. So on the internet, there are some very good websites, but the majority are...
We've landed.
No, the majority are not very good because there's no evidential background to them. And of course, with my kind of background, this is the only way I can present evidence, through evidential eyes. Yeah?
Yep.
So that's the basis that I try to do it. So what I'm trying to do is different from all of the other sides. Some are doing it similarly, but they haven't got my kind of police background. I know what evidence is and what would stand up in a court of law. For example, and you'll back me up on this, if, for example, this is a former police officer, if he was driving home tonight and he'd had one too many drinks and he got pulled by the police, if it weren't one of his mates, he'd let him off. But basically, if he got pulled and they suspected he was drink driving, they'd ask him to do a breath test. An instant breath test, blow into this. Correct?
Yep.
If he blew positive on the little handheld meter. They'd say you're positive, you're under arrest. They'd then take him back to a police station, a main police station, and they'd say blow into this big machine, an intoximeter. You're over the limit. What does it produce? It produces a printout that says chemical analysis, you are over the limit. What goes to court as the evidence that convicts you of drink driving? That piece of paper. Held up in court as a piece of documentary evidence that says on that day you blew positive. Now tell me, what's the difference between telemetry data from an F-16 chasing a UFO for 75 minutes in a dogfight over Belgium, where all of the cockpit instrumentation was recorded on video, all of the dogfight was confirmed on 7 different airports, 3 military, 4 civilian, and all that telemetry data, second by second, over 75 minutes, leads to a printout that you can put up in a hypothetical court of law on the debate of UFO reality. And on that telemetry data it would say that during that dogfight where 2 F-16s are chasing the UFO, basically at one point, on several occasions, but at one point it goes whew, straight up in the air and jumps 5,000 feet in 3 seconds, straight up, and then it does a sharp angle and drops down to the ground, and at the bottom of the ground it then does a right angle turn, an L shape, as it before impacting. At the point it did the L shape, how many G's do you think it was pulling? Bear in mind the maximum for stealth even now is 11 to 12 G's. It was telemetry data 35 G's. Should that not be on the 6 o'clock news? Hard evidence, no difference from that drink drive piece of paper. And then you've got to ask yourself, why is that not on the 6 o'clock news? So it's very easy to prove that there is a mainstream bias against the best evidence. Okay, so that's the introduction. So this is my take in the first hour. Just for those people who arrived late, I'll let you off. I'm sure you've had long journeys. But the order of play tonight is, first hour is this lecture, the circumstantial evidence case for ET, extraterrestrial. Then we'll have a break, and then I'll show you some video clips that I think are very interesting, talk about other things. And then finally, if we've got time, we'll do some Q&A, questions and answers. Okay? So, first part, circumstantial evidence case. Piece of gadget, switch on, is it working? Oh my God, it is. Right, before I talk to you about UFOs, if I'm going to talk to you about evidence, you've got to have a bit of an understanding of what evidence is in terms of what could get you into a court of law, how you present the evidence. Well, in reality, there's only 3 basic forms of evidence. There's real evidence, which is called physical evidence. It's called real evidence, which is the gun, the knife. If you think of a murder scenario, the murder weapon, something physical. If I batter this lady with the glasses on the front row,
She is picking on me again, isn't it?
yeah, and you all witness it, you'd see that, and I murdered her with this, fractured her skull, then that would become the murder weapon, yes? That murder weapon would be held up in a murder trial as GH1 exhibit. This was the implement used to stare this lady's head in, because she'd never seen me before. Absolutely true though, that's what we do, isn't it? Yeah. We've all seen the bill, any police documentary, any police drama, whilst they don't present it very well, that's the basic rule. So, physical evidence. Anything that you can physically pick up, tangible. Yeah? Even if it was, you were hit by a motorboat in the water, you were swimming in the paddling in Spain, and suddenly a motorboat goes past, you get hit by the propeller and you're killed. Well, you can't physically pick the boat up, bring it into court, but what you can do is take a photograph of the boat, photograph of the blades with the blood on the blades, blah blah blah. That then becomes the documentary evidence that is produced in court. This boat, the Mary Elizabeth, hit this lady on such and such a date, and this was the forensic blood analysis of and photographs of the blood on the propeller blades, etc, etc. That's how evidence gets into court. So you've got the real evidence, and then we talked about documentary evidence. Anything. So if you think about fraud, yeah, somebody's cloned your credit card, and then you look on your monthly statement and see that £6,000's gone, and you go, wait, I haven't done that. Ring up the bank, somebody's cloned it. That produces a paper trail. That evidence is produced in court to get you your money back, because you didn't actually spend the £6,000. That's the nature. So physical evidence, documentary evidence, anything in written form, piece of paper. But the main thing that we have all around the world is down to witness testimony, which produces two things. If I go back to the stove in this lady's head in, just using it as an example, I always do this, pick on somebody in a nice way, but illustrate the point. If I walked over to this lady now, shoved that stand over her head, cracked her skull, she dies, bleeds to death in this room, I hope you sleep okay tonight. But basically, if that happened, what would likely happen? You'd all go, oh, what's he done? Somebody would probably wrestle me to the ground, arrest me, citizen's arrest, but she'd be dead. You'll have seen it. You become witnesses to a murder. Yes?
Yeah.
So what would happen? Police don't all come in and go, right, what did you see? What did you see? They do, but they never do it in a group. You're taken aside individually. Police officer, one-to-one. Tell me what you saw. So you get, say there's 50 people in this room, 50 different statements about what they saw. And each perception of what you saw will be slightly different. Perception is very strange, and the skeptics will say, oh, Chris French, if anybody see me on telly with Chris French, the well-known skeptic, he didn't survive very well against me, but there you go. He will argue that, oh, it's just all UFO, it's all people mistake and psychology, blah, blah, blah. But let's go back to our scenario now. You're all witnesses, but somebody in the back row will not see as much as somebody on the front row. Does that make sense? So your perception will be slightly different. But here's the thing with perception. When we take our 50 statements, you'll all give basically wide descriptions of me. Say if I'd just done it and I once stood in front of you, so you'd only see me briefly. Some would say I was black, some would say I was white, some would say I was 6 foot, some would say I was 6'3". That's the perception errors that we make. But you'd all say, I saw a man stand up and saw him hit this woman with something, and she fell to the floor, something like that. So if we think about it, whilst our perceptions may vary a great deal in terms of description, physical descriptions of a person, a place, some are good, some are bad, the general story that man hits lady on front row, she collapses, man runs off, me going out the back door kind of thing, the general story would be accurate from the 50 witnesses. But your perceptions in terms of personal descriptions may vary wildly. But this is what Chris French and the skeptics don't say, that the general story is accurate. And if you don't know the person sat next to you, then you're what's called independent witnesses. They're the best witnesses we can have, because you've no axe to grind. You just happen to be in the wrong place, wrong time, and you see something. Yeah? So if we get 50 people who don't know each other, who all give that same story, that man